Greetings! At the end of the Brigitte Bardot video, I said that the next video would feature a return to magic. Well, there's been a change of plans. For as sure as Queen's We Will Rock You must be followed by We Are the Champions, the Brigitte Bardot video must be followed by this video. Allow me to explain. I love toys. I've always loved toys. I will always love toys. I buy myself toys all the time. Every Christmas, ever, I always ask for toys. And this past Christmas was no exception. Now, I like kinetic things. I like bodies in motion. And I like electronic things as well. And it had to be relatively small because the tree house that we live in is tiny. So I looked and looked, and I found what are called marble runs. It's a whole thing, the marble run. A marble run is essentially a roller coaster for marbles. Terrific idea, terrific idea. Then I discovered that there are motorized versions of marble runs, even better. So I looked around and I found what we have here. It's called the Galaxy Marble Run. There are a bunch of videos on YouTube that show this and people building it. Lots of videos out there, and this is another one to add to the list. What a process it was. Let me kind of describe my journey. In building Brigitte Bardot, with every step I realized that I was learning essential skills that I would need to build this beast. And thank goodness I did. I learned a lot, and I came up with some of my own kind of ideas and tools to help facilitate the process. So this was all ultimately the plan, was to prepare myself for this because I knew it was going to be daunting. So I finished Brigitte, gave myself a couple of days to recuperate, and then cracked open the box on this and took a look at it. It comes essentially with this base that all of the larger pieces eventually snap into and all snap together, and 8 plywood sheets with all the pieces laser cut out of them, all of the 678 pieces. 678, for God's sake! I couldn't believe it. So upon discovering this, I immediately said, this is a mistake. This is a horrible mistake. I said to Jan, I'm in way over my head. Let me just write you a check, and I can just throw this away, okay? Because I was paralyzed with anxiety at the very idea of trying to do all this. She said, oh, just relax, try it, take it piece by piece, see what happens. Oh, okay, fine. So I begin the build. And I got to a certain point with the printed instructions. While very good, they just didn't explain what I needed to know, and things were not working out well at all. And I, again, wanted to quit, write a check and be done with it. So I went online, and I found a number of videos that show how to build one of these. And I found one that looked particularly good, and it said 4:53. And I thought, oh, gee, I don't know if I can learn a whole lot in 4 minutes and 53 seconds, but it's worth taking a look because I'm stuck here and I'm about to chuck the whole thing. So I pull up the video, and indeed it's 4 hours and 53 minutes long. A step-by-step build, piece-by-piece build. And it's interesting because in the promo for this, it says, oh, it takes about 5 hours to build. I'm here to tell you, it takes at least 2 hours to find the pieces and punch them out of the plywood slabs without breaking them. And you can't do it ahead of time because they're so small and they look so similar. That would be a disaster. So it takes hours just to find the pieces. In this 4 hour and 53 minute video, in each segment of it, when the guy is doing a particular part of the build, all the pieces are laid out there for him, and he's building it. With all the pieces found and laid out, it took 4 hours and 53 minutes. So, yeah, what a journey. So I watched it. I watched the whole thing. I used the book, and when I got stuck, I would go and return to the video. Oh, and I gave up many times along the way, and I was an irritable bastard at moments. It was a joy. It was a lot of fun, a great sense of accomplishment, also quite maddening. I would say in total it probably took about 12, 15 hours total. Again, a lot of it was in finding the pieces, and then the one thing that I really discovered is the sanding involved, because everything snaps together. Which brings us to the design of this. I'm astonished that anybody was even able to design this thing. It's beyond me how anybody could actually think up something like this and design it. Even more amazing is the fact that it all snaps together, essentially. Doubly amazing. Just slightly less amazing than those two is the fact that I was actually able to build this. Believe me. So yeah, it takes about 12 to 15 hours, and as I said, you have to sand a lot of the pieces because you want the pieces to lock together tightly and securely, and you develop a feel for it. You can tell when a piece is going to go in and be locked and secure and snug, but you can tell when it's not going to want to go in, and you might not be able to get it all in. And because the fittings are so precise in all of this, everything has to be flush and tight and right. And if it's too tight, you run the risk of breaking it. And of course I broke a number of pieces. So when it feels too tight, I always make sure to sand it down so that it's going to fit snugly. And a lot of the moving parts also need to be not only sanded but waxed as well, a lot of the rotating parts, as you'll see in a moment. And that's something that I couldn't really pick up on in the written instructions either, because they had these wee tiny little symbols that said sand and wax, and I couldn't make them out. But that was much better described in the video. So yeah, about 12 to 15 hours, I finally got her done. So let's take a bit of a closer look. The very first thing we build is the globe. And things were moving along quite well, and then I got it all finished, but there was a great gaping hole in it. And of course I had another meltdown, and that's the second time that I quit and offered to write a check. And it also marks the beginning of when I started using the online video in addition to the instruction text. Throughout the rest of the build, I relied on that heavily. So soon after the globe comes the powerhouse. That's the battery, the on-off switch, and all the wires from the battery are tucked in here. It was an excruciating process to tuck all those in there without breaking them, and then you have to put this entire wooden unit over top of it. And I feared throughout the entire build that I'd somehow severed the wires or something was screwed up and it wasn't going to work. So I get through the entire build, everything's done, fearing at every step that it's not going to work. I push the on-off switch and it doesn't start. And I again threatened to chuck the whole thing out the window and write a check. And I looked at the wiring, everything looked fine. Then I realized the problem. I thought there were only 2 batteries that were needed for it to operate, but on the other side of this, there are 2 more batteries. And I went scrambling, grabbed the other 2 batteries, plugged them in, pushed the button, and it worked. The marble run consists of 3 routes. When the ball first drops in up here, it hits this little rocker panel. And let's say it makes it go over to this side of the device. Comes over here, hits this little switcher, and as it moves down the switcher, it moves the switcher over to the other lane. Then the ball continues down, 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 around, and eventually down into the waiting room, which is a slanted area, and then the ball falls into the little hole in the rotating wheel and comes back up and repeats the cycle. So that's route number 1. Now remember, when that ball came down, it knocked this little switch over, so the next ball has to come down this route. Then it goes down the cool, bouncy little steps, down and around, comes out what I call the bunghole, then continues on and goes back into the waiting room to come back up the little Ferris wheel thingy. Then the third route, when the ball comes out, because the rocker panel has been knocked this way, it can now only go this way. So the ball goes down, drops down, drops down, drops down, zoop, down into the rotating globe, which eventually deposits it down the ramp and into the waiting room. So those are the 3 routes. And now let's fire her up, shall we? The Galaxy Marble Run. It's loud. I say, the Galaxy Marble Run. Amazing, amazing mechanical marvel. So next time, I promise, I will return with more magic, but today I will leave you with this love letter to the Galaxy Marble Run. Thanks for watching. See you next time.